If you're going to build the best Sorare team that you possibly can, then the very first thing you've got to do is lay out the schematics and understand exactly how you're going to go about building your Sorare club. Because you're going to be doing everything. You're going to be the manager, selecting the players, picking the captain, what division are you going to go into, what rewards are you going to target. You're going to be the scout, watching whatever football from around the world to ID the best talent that you possibly can to bring into your club. And yes, you're going to be the director of football as well. You're going to be out there making these trades, making these deals happen to bring this talent into your Sorare club. And no matter what your budget is for your Sorare club, this 3-step masterclass that I've broken down from a 6-part playlist is going to make sure that you've got all the bases covered and you've built the most robust team you possibly can so that you can attack Sorare the best possible way you can with your budget. No matter when you're watching this, I would be very interested to hear what your number one takeaway is from the video. Drop that down in the comment section of the video at any point. If you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel, share, retweet, all that good stuff, guys. Stay out of trouble, and let's get stuck into it. Now, your very first squad, your first 10 players or so, is going to be the foundations of your entire club. So what we're looking for when we're building the foundations is to minimize beginner mistakes, which is normally you buy somebody who is playing tomorrow, or you buy 5 guys really quickly because you click that link in the description of the video, and once you buy 5 cards, you get 1 for free. Some people just run through that to get the free cards because all the cards are tradable. You can keep them, you can sell them. Of course, you can do whatever you want with them. You know that already. And we don't want any of that to happen. The best advice you can have when you're building your foundations is to try and make sure across the first 10 cards or so, you're thinking about covering as much of the footballing calendar as you possibly can. The European calendars mainly occupy the period between August to May, which covers a huge part of the calendar anyway, but the leagues outside of Europe, particularly in MLS, Argentina and Brazil, Mexico, Japan, Korea, are all at peak points in their season when the European leagues go into the off season, and they have their own different spikes in the market. But on top of that, of course, it allows you to continue playing even though when the European cards are not. And like I mentioned before, when you're building your very first team, you want to be having that in the back of your mind. Because no matter what your budget is, if that's the way you're building your team out, is that you want to have calendar coverage and you want to cover more than one region. And by the way, you don't need to go non-EU to have this calendar coverage. Leagues like Norway, Russia, Denmark, they bleed into the summer months as well. And if you strategically plan them out well enough, you don't really need to leave Europe anymore to get that complete calendar coverage. But in any case, if that's the angle of approach you're taking with it, you can have 2 teams built out from your scouting and from your analysis and making watch lists on things like Sorare data, and you can have like a team for tomorrow and a team for today. What's the team for today? Well, they're the guys that are playing right now, and you're going to need to pay right now prices for them. Whereas a team for tomorrow, a division, a league, a player, whatever, that are not currently in season, they're in their off season at the moment, they will not be priced the same as a player that's currently playing the now. So if both of these profiles come into your original schematics, no matter what your budget is, you can build a very exciting team for today or a very exciting team for tomorrow. Now, if you're buying a team for tomorrow, then you're going to need to wait for them to come in season for you to kind of reap the rewards of your scouting and your trading that you've been undertaking. But that will have its day, and that requires a bit more patience. If you do have a bit more money to get involved straight away and you don't have as much patience, then buying a team for today is definitely what I would recommend also. But have in mind, with any tertiary, with any extra pieces that you're thinking about maybe picking up, can they tick that box for you? Ideally, once you've picked up your first 10 cards, your first squad or so, you want to be completing the ultimate Venn diagram here. The All-Star division and the Under-23 division does not care where your players are playing football. You can play them in these divisions. But then if you do have this calendar coverage, then you should be building out the options and the potential to field a region-specific team at some point. So by making sure as many of your players as possible cross into as much of this Venn diagram as possible, by the time you get to player 10 to 15 to 20, you'll then feel really the strength of choices, the strength of options, and the strength of utility that your first Sorare club, your first Sorare squad has been given. If you're sitting there wondering, Quinny, what are the 2 best divisions to pick up if I wanted to completely cover the calendar? The apex pairing for quality of player, and availability and prices that you can get your hands on, as well as that absolute calendar coverage, is the Turkish Super League and the MLS. Notable mentions to Argentina, Brazil for the non-EU side of things, as well as the English Championship and the Scottish Premiership for the European side of the calendar. That's for how many games they play and exactly when their games kind of cross over and overlap, how optimal all of them. Now, the second step is probably the most fun and probably my favourite, and that is working out what your club's philosophy is going to be. Sorare is global fantasy football and it's 5-a-side, so we've got the goalkeeper, defender, midfielder and forward. But that extra spot is going to tell me a lot about your philosophy, what you appreciate about football and your tactics to attacking the leaderboard. Now, no matter whether you're going to go for the less risky proposition of doubling up in defence, going for the gung-ho approach and doubling up in attack, or going for that kind of happy medium of doubling up in midfield, I recommend every squad be built out on a 3-to-1 ratio. So when you're brand new and you've got your first couple of teams, for every playing goalkeeper you've got, you don't have any more than 3 defenders, midfielders and forwards. That ratio gives you enough flexibility and manoeuvrability so that you can actually play a really strong team and double up in any of these positions depending on the specific situation that you're confronted with on the game week. Forecasting and planning is amazing, but I know from playing Sorare, the reality of the game week is sometimes the best laid plans go down the drain. And yeah, I might have started out thinking I'm going to play 2 forwards this game week, but my 2 defenders have got such an amazing match that I can't not play both of them. And you want to be set up to play the best team you possibly can at every single turn. What that ratio allows you to do as well is poise your club for upsides. As soon as you start to get some traction and you're hitting leaderboards and you're activating wins, that ratio of 3-to-1 coupled with the Venn diagram from when we laid our foundations means you can very quickly start to cover other regions and other divisions as well as the main one that you're focusing on. Because you can only play one team per entry, and if you've got lots of players playing that you believe in, then you want to activate them and put them in as many different competitions as you possibly can. Now, no matter what your budget is when you're looking at these different positions, the guys have to be able to score over 70, over 75. Your budget is just going to dictate the frequency in which you can get a player that's going to produce those scores for you every single game week, or every 5 game weeks, or every 8 game weeks, whatever it might be. But please, when you're identifying people, if they do not have the potential to break over 75 points, they are going to have very limited utility to you in the longer run, and those cards primarily are the beginner mistake ones we want to avoid. Even if it's a guy that averages 52 points out of 100 but once in a blue moon can do 80, that's fine. A guy that does 35 to 38 every week but 5 times a season does 70, that's fine. A guy that never drops below 45 but never goes above 56, maybe. But to get into the leaderboards, you do need big dark green scores, so please bear that in mind. Another thing that comes into a lot of managers thinking when they're building out their philosophy is stacking, where they maybe take out multiple players from a team and put them together so they get that correlation of a good result affecting a few different players. This is a great strategy if you don't want to spend much time on the game and you're happy to spend a bit more money. But for me, the optimal strategy is always to just cherry pick the absolute best players you possibly can. I stack a lot of Celtic cards because I'm a huge Celtic fan, but out with my Celtic strategy, that's all I do is I go around and I love that defender, so I want to put him in my team somewhere. And that midfielder, I think he's got a lot of promise. I'm going to pick him up and put him in my team next. Because the way the leaderboards go, and as well as now the 5 sub rule and the minutes that players get, stacking is not as optimal as what it once was. And don't get me wrong, with everything I just said there, the absolute opposite is quite true. You can pick up little stacks now because of the minutes that players pick up for maybe a bit cheaper than what was once possible. Because I have this with Celtic, I've got some players that I can guarantee you they will play 30 or 60 minutes. And depends on the player and depending on what team you're going to be plugging them into, that might be workable. But overall, stacks for me have to be happy accidents. You know, if on the individual merit of every player that you're identifying, you get 1 or 2 in and they're actually playing the same club, fantastic. Now, we do want to target and identify players that play within the same region, the same division, because we want that calendar coverage. But the actual team, I'm not as fussed about that. And the third and probably most valuable step in this masterclass is understanding your team assets. For me, every Sorare card I've got is broken into one of 3 categories. The first one is an SO5 token, and that's basically a card that I'm buying sheer utility. Sheer SO5 utility is all I'm after for it. It might be a goalkeeper that activates a division. It might be a goal scorer that helps me out with something I'm currently missing. It might be a super rare to get a division activated, whatever it might be. Some guys I've got in my team, I do not care and I do not check the price of them in any frequency because I've bought them for the price I've paid for them and I'm getting the service out of them that I've paid the money for. So I don't care about market values for those cards. The second category I'm always looking at is ones that have superstar potential. Now, I did really well in my first 18 months on Sorare because I had a great eye for picking up a lot of super rares and a lot of rares that went on to have amazing careers over the last 18 months or so. And it's really a who's who of European football. And getting as many as I once had is becoming quite tricky because there's a lot of great scouts out there. There's a lot of great Sorare managers that have got just as good an eye, if not a better eye than I do for talent. And subsequently, these guys are quite hard to get at a really cheap, really attractive price these days. The reason that these are important to identify is because guys that can have that superstar potential, their price can move astronomically when they start getting into fantastic form, and all the scout pages and all the pundits and agents and transfer rumors are all circling around them. And if you've got a player like that, then that can do wonders for your Sorare journey, whether it is to realise some profit and cash out, or whether it is to reinvest that money back into the squad and make significant improvements. And if you're not identifying players that you're bringing into your club, or you're looking to bring into your club that have that sniff of potential, then you're missing out. You should always have somebody in your club floating around that you believe could make it to the top. That guy that could get his chance. That guy who has just got a loan, might get a new manager at the club, whatever it might be. It's just one thing they're looking to change and they can become a superstar at their club, in their division. Obviously, Jackpot is a global superstar, but there's very few of them. Because when it comes to the assets in your team, people are always going to pay money for good football players. And you need to be identifying as many of those guys that you can maybe bring in that maybe you see them as being undervalued today and you think, oh, maybe I don't really need a guy that good. But if you can afford them, I would always look to bring them in, because superstars will always have a weight in the market. And when you've got cards that have weight in the market, that gives you options and flexibility in the future. And in the third asset, I would always be identifying and looking to actively capture into this foundation is background characters. And it's a nice encompassing title for the backup goalkeeper, the guy that's injured, the guy that's fell out of favour, the guy that's had a tissy fit and fell out with the club or fell out with the manager, that sort of thing. These guys are always going to be underpriced because the majority of the market is priced on SO5 utility. Can you play them today? And if you can't play them today, they will be cheaper as a result. Now, what you're paying for here is time. You're buying a goalkeeper who's sitting on the bench with the hope and the promise that maybe he comes back and becomes a number one in that team or in another team. You're spending time hoping that guy recovers from injury and comes back better than ever before. But those are great pieces to have in your foundation, because those ones, if you identify them correctly, almost certainly will come good to some extent at some point. And if we can get a guy or two into our first 10 to 15 to 20 cards that tick some of those boxes as well, then without even trying, later on, we'll just fall into a victory of that goalkeeper gets a move, that guy comes back from injury, that manager's been sacked and this guy's back in the team. You've not done anything. And all of a sudden, one of your players that you totally forgot you owned is now went up in value and you can now do something with them. Every other card that doesn't fall into any of these categories, for me, is always fair game to be traded, to be played, to be sold, to be bought, whatever. They're the moving pieces of the club that go in and out of the market, that come in and out of form, fitness and availability, and they're the moving pieces. But the ones that fall into these categories, these are the ones that I pay extra attention to and I specifically target, identify and bring into my club. I hope you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to let me know in the comment section down below what you think your number one takeaway is from the video. I hope you've enjoyed this one. On screen now is some other stuff I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Stay out of trouble and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.